In this week's GTA 5 o'clock, all the details and first impressions as Rockstar show off 5 new missions, radio stations and track lists confirmed, plus real gang members on the voice cast and customisable beards. It's the only GTA 5 YouTube show to have seen the game. It's this week's essential GTA 5 o'clock. Hi, welcome to this week's episode of GTA 5 o'clock. Hope you're well out there. I'm Tim Weaver. I'm here with Dan Dawkins. Hello, Dan.
Hello.
Back from holiday.
Hello.
And ready to rumble.
I am. I cannot wait, Tim. Let's go.
Okay, so a busy week this week, Dan. Stuff we've got to mop up front includes new screenshots, stuff about the music, quotes from Lazlo Jones, and then we've got impressions from IGN's hands-on with GTA 5. Dan, you just wanted to quickly say something before we kick things off.
2 quick things. One is that obviously there's been a spoiler leak into the world. We on the show haven't covered that. We won't cover that. You can watch with confidence and safety. The only vaguely spoilery thing we've done is an achievements show that's completely on its own and clearly marked as spoilers. And if, to be honest, it's not even that spoilery anyway. Number 2 is we've launched a spin-off of GTA 5 o'clock, you might have noticed, called GTA 5 Minute Facts. That is like each of GTA 5's key features broken down into 5 short, tight minutes. It's available daily on the channel and will aim to be at the same time as the main show, 5 PM BST. If you've watched the show religiously week in, week out, it may not be new info for you, but it's largely for people who are trying to catch up. It's a nice bit of revision, inverted commas, for the show. More details at the end of the show. Just wanted to mention it to you, Tim.
Screenshots, Dan. We had a few this week that have cropped up. Nothing revelatory, but a couple of interesting things. One was that Michael had a beard in one of the screenshots. So I don't know whether you can customise a beard. That sounds like a weird thing to do. But he did have the beginnings of a beard. Yeah,
that seems it seems most likely that there's customisation options to put a beard on. There certainly will be when they unveil the GTA Online creator. All I can note is that, Michael looks slim with a beard, which is what many fat men attempt to do with a beard, isn't it?
Yeah.
Slimming.
I wouldn't know, obviously, being the picture of health.
No, with the audio line, Tim, it wouldn't be an issue.
No,
but,
exactly.
Yeah.
The other thing was that he appeared to have a customised weapon. We know all about that. We've spoken at length about that in previous week. Franklin had a pair of glasses on. Again, part of the customisation options in GTA 5. And finally, the other screenshot I thought was quite interesting was Trevor following Michael in a submersible, Michael diving down. Where could they be going? Could Michael be leading him to a wreck where he knows there's some buried treasure, some money, whatever?
Yeah.
Okay, so those are the screenshots. We told you it would be quick, and indeed it was. Dan, Lazlo Jones has been speaking.
Yeah, famous GTA radio DJ Lazlo. That's nothing like he sounds. Lazlo Jones has been speaking. He's been doing a tour of various states talking about his involvement with GTA 5. Interesting stuff came out actually just today where he told WGN that Rockstar are working with real-life gangsters, to get authentic voice for GTA 5. And he said that they worked with one guy who'd come out of prison one day before.
As some wag commented on Twitter, it's like Rockstar have watched a few episodes of The Wire or something.
Indeed. And they have. They openly said that.
Yeah, no, they did.
And hey, of course they have. And a quote from him is, he says, there's black gangs, there's Latino gangs. We recruited a guy who gets gang members, like actual gang members, real gang members. That's maybe he's obliged to say the word gang members like 15 times a sentence. And he goes, El Salvadorian gang dudes with amazing tattoos. When I'd literally got out of prison the day before. We brought these guys in to record these characters because, they don't want a goofy LA actor who went to a fancy school trying to be a hard gang member. And this is basically that they were given them lines of dialogue they'd written, and the gang members rejected it, and they ended up having to rewrite huge sections of the game.
Oh, interesting, okay.
So, maybe the dialogue was actually fine. It's just that when a gang member tells you the dialogue's bad, you change it.
Yeah, it's probably a good idea to listen. Especially if they've got loads of prison tattoos. That's a dead giveaway. They're sort of dangerous.
So, yeah, like Lazlo doing the rounds, he's interesting as ever.
Okay, so music was something that we didn't get a chance to cover last week because it dropped literally as soon as we put last week's show out. Rolling Stone ran an article about the soundtrack and the radio stations in GTA 5. A really interesting insight, actually, into the world of GTA 5's music. They spoke with Rockstar's soundtrack supervisor, Ivan Pavlovich. And it was. There's all sorts of stuff. I'm going to quote you some of it, and there's some other stuff that we can add in. Dan, because you've been on holiday, you don't actually know a lot about this, so you're going to be reacting live from my own brain.
Okay. One thing to say really is that obviously in the last 2 weeks there has been a rumoured or an actual GTA 5 leak, and a huge part of that was soundtrack information. So I deliberately stayed away from it as much as I could, though I did have a sneaky peek just to see how real I thought it was. And because we've seen GTA 5 running live, there was a few songs I'd heard on the soundtrack that I'd sort of been keeping to myself, and a few of them have cropped up in the leak, so that to me is quite verificational. But this stuff is all official, Rockstar approved soundtrack information, so I'm going to react live and officially to the new stuff.
Okay, so Rolling Stone said to him, it sounds like there's a lot of music in GTA 5, which is probably the understatement of the year. Ivan says, we have 15 radio stations, 2 talk radio stations, 240 licensed songs, and somewhere in the proximity of 20 movies worth of score.
Wow.
It's the largest soundtrack that we've done, and the largest score that we've done. For this game, which is set in our version of modern-day Los Angeles, what was important for us was to capture that feeling of LA and California. We approached the radio stations as the musical soundscape you experience as you fly into LA. And that musical experience, Dan, is comprised of 4 different artists. One is Tangerine Dream. The other, which we'll go on to talk about in a little bit, the other is Woody Jackson, who you may remember that scored Red Dead and also helped out with the score on LA Noire. Yeah. And the other 2 are Alchemist and Ono, who, of course, Dan, are hip-hop producers.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so the 4... 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 4. The 4... radio stations that Rolling Stone gave samples of were Vinewood Boulevard, East Los FM, West Coast Classics, and Rebel Radio. We'll break those down individually in a second. Another website, Pitchfork, also showed off Fly Low FM, which is a radio station hosted and mixed by Flying Lotus and featuring Tyler
Flying
the Creator.
Lotus. Ba, 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 ba.
One of your favourites, Dan?
Well, no, but didn't we have a discussion, Tim? I don't know if it was on air or off air.
Yeah.
Many months ago, where somehow, I don't even know how I knew, I suspected that Flying Lotus was part of it.
You did say that,
I played
Dan,
you the tracks and you went, no, my friend, this doesn't sound right. But you didn't rule it out.
Oh, right, okay. What the sort of electronic soundtrack?
Yeah, electronic one.
Maybe, yeah.
And you just, it goes, to me, it sounds more like Kavinsky, but I don't know why. I'd had a tip-off that it was Flying Lotus, so I had a feeling it would be Flying Lotus.
Listen, Dan, I know it's hard to believe, but sometimes I do get things wrong.
No.
I'm sure the people in the comments there will be really staggered by that. But, but anyway, Ivan goes on to talk about the different radio stations. Vinewood Boulevard features Stephen Pope and Nate Williams from, I think it's pronounced Waves. I'm really sorry, I don't really know that band at all. Is that pronounced Waves?
2 V's.
It's got two V's.
I don't know.
Ivan says this is a modern rock station, the embodiment of the young Los Angeles rock scene. Now, the sample that Rolling Stone ran on their website features Stephen and Nate from Waves, I'm going to go with, and features 3 songs. They don't specify on Rolling Stone what those songs are, but I got them here for you anyway.
Brilliant.
California Girls by Shark, Crawling After You by Bass Drum of Death, and The Dream by 3 OCs. So those are the 3 songs sampled on Vinewood Boulevard Radio. Those are 3 songs that we now know are confirmed for the GTA 5 soundtrack. Then Ivan moved on to talking about East Los FM, which is the a radio station that celebrates the Mexican culture in Los Angeles. It's curated and DJ'd by Camilo Lara from the Mexican Institute of Sound, who I'm sure you're very, very aware of, Dan.
Oh, very aware of his oeuvre, yeah.
Ivan says it's a combination of Mexican electronica, narco corridos, other traditional songs, and Mexican ska. Narco corridos I'm sure most people out there will be aware are like drug songs, traditional drug songs. That the narcos. See, the narco bit is the giveaway. I never ever heard of Mexican ska before, but it sounds brilliant.
Again, it's not a subgenre with which I am intimate.
But what I will say is
I'm open and embracing.
What I will say is the sample that they had of the radio station on Rolling Stone was excellent. Like the songs that they had were really, really good. There was Radio Capital by La Vida Boheme or Boheme. I'm sorry, my Spanish is not so hot. El Sonidito by the Hechizeros Band, and La Liga featuring Alika, Yo Tengo El Don, which, having found the video on YouTube, is actually, I think they're Argentinian rather than Mexican.
Okay.
But anyway, I highly, highly advise you out there to, if you haven't already, to listen to El Sonidito by the Hechizeros Band. It's got a real... It's like... It's brilliant. It's really good. Really catchy.
You gave me a little blast earlier this morning, and I must say I was smiling.
Yeah.
Loved it.
It'll get you moving. Okay, so next he went on to talk about West Coast Classics radio station. He says, DJ Pooh hosts the West Coast Classic station. Again, someone we've talked about in previous weeks and months about being involved. He's legendary. This is the guy who created the movie Friday. He's a big personality, and he grew up with all these guys who were on the station. We were getting phone calls from Pooh saying, I'm driving over to Dre's house. What do you need from him? And then 30 minutes later, he's like, I'm going to Snoop's house. So he's obviously well connected.
What a name dropper.
Yeah, it's hosted by him, this station. And the three songs that the sample included were What Would You Do by The Dog Pound, Late Night Hype by Compton's Most Wanted, and the brilliant Gangster Gangster by NWA. Finally, on Rolling Stone's Look at the Music, they had a sample from Rebel Radio, which is kind of like the sort of country and western, I guess, station that you'll probably want blasting out your car as you head up to Blaine County. It's hosted by a guy called Jesco White, who apparently is... I looked him up on YouTube, and he looks like he's sort of front and centre of a reality TV show called The Wild and Wonderful Whites of West Virginia.
Right.
I don't want to cast aspersions, but he looks it looks like a little bit of a hick family, and the various japes they get up to out in West Virginia. But Ivan, the guy who's put this all together, was really excited about Jesco White fronting and hosting Rebel Radio. He said, this is the kind of character that just fills out this world we've created. 3 songs they showed on the sample was I Can't Hardly Stand It by Charlie Feathers, and I'll Be Hating You by the brilliantly named Johnny Paycheck, and Get Out of My Car...
Is that his real name?
Johnny Paycheck. And Get Out of My Car by Hazel Adkins. Okay, so those are the samples that they had on Rolling Stone. However, that wasn't all that Ivan had to say. Ivan went on to say...
Can't be more.
Rolling Stone went on to ask him Pam Grier, Bootsy Collins and Kenny Loggins were some of the other names I've heard thrown around.
Oh,
and
Kenny Loggins.
Ivan's response was, we worked with all of them. Pam is the host of a soul station focusing a little bit on lowrider classics. Bootsy Collins is the host of an 80s boogie funk station. Man. And Kenny Loggins, Dan, he's the host of our classic rock station. And then Ivan says, I guess he means in terms of getting personalities in and getting the songs, he says, this is our biggest accomplishment. So they're obviously pretty chuffed about it.
What Kenny Loggins is?
I think Kenny Loggins is a pretty big achievement, isn't he? And then finally, he goes on to talk a bit more about the wider kind of soundtrack and score and stuff. Rolling Stone asked him, who did the game score? He said, we started with Tangerine Dream. Complementing his work, we have Woody Jackson, who scored Red Dead Redemption. Woody's an amazing musician. And a third part of the triangle is Alchemist and Oh No. Although each of these composers is used to define a character or an environment, what's been interesting about this process is that it's been the first fully collaborative score that we've done. Even though you may be triggering one score with a particular character or within a particular area in the world, you're always hearing elements from other composers. The first time you come into the country, you're blown away by Woody Jackson's rock score, but within that, you're still hearing elements of Tangerine Dream and Alchemist and Oh No, so you're never too far away from this core sound that we've established for the game. What's interesting for people, might be interesting, I guess, for people out there, is that if you go to YouTube and you put in a search for Tangerine Dream Rubicon full album. It'll bring up the full album, as the name search suggests, for Tangerine Dream's album Rubicon. Go to the 7-minute mark. Now that is pretty much a note-for-note representation of the music that we heard in our gameplay demo. It is so close to it. I'm not saying it's the same one, but it is so close to it. Give it a listen. It's absolutely brilliant. Really highly recommend giving that a listen. Okay, and then finally, Rolling Stone asked Ivan, we heard that you worked with Flying Lotus as well. He says, for us, he's the most exciting person in the electronic music scene. Tyler, Creator, is featured on his station too. And then Rolling Stone said, word is that those two collaborated on a song for the game. He says, there is an original song made for the game. You'll find some classics on Flying Lotus's station, but a lot of the station is based on unreleased new material created either by Steve, who's the guy from Flying Lotus himself, or friends of his who submitted music to him for this project. In the interview that Rockstar did with Pitchfork, they actually list the soundtrack, the list of songs from the radio station, from Flylow FM. So I'll just quickly go through those here. Flylow FM, because these are all confirmed songs now, so we're getting a real sense of the soundtrack. Hosted and mixed by Flying Lotus, featuring Tyler, the Creator. On the sample that they gave out on Pitchfork, the song was 100 HM by Hudson Mohawk. But elsewhere on the station, you'll get Flying Lotus featuring Nikki Randa with Getting There, Clams Casino with Crystals, Flying Lotus again with Cross Swerved, Flying Lotus with B-Spin, Flying Lotus with See Through to You, Flying Lotus with The Diddler, Flying Lotus with Computer Face Remix, again that Hudson Mohawk song I mentioned just now, 100 HM, Flying Lotus featuring Nikki Randa, The Kill, Tyler, the Creator, Garbage, Outcast, Elevators, Me and You, Captain Murphy, Evil Grin, Flying Lotus, Catapult Man, Dabre, is that Dabre, Dan?
I don't know.
Encoded Flow, Machine Drum, She Died There, DJ Rashad, It's Whack, Thundercat, Oh Sheet, It's X, and Flying Lotus, Stonecutters, Shadow Child 23, Kingdom, Stalker Ha, and Aphex Twin, Window Licker.
Yeah, wicked song.
That, Dan, is as much as I can give you on music.
Well, allow me to give you some more. First of all, can I hand some personal advice to Tyler, the Creator? Dude, you've left caps lock on. All your tweets are shouting.
Oh, really?
I think he actually knows that. I just wanted to humorously point it out. Also, Cara Delvine, UK-based fashion model and chumsy friend with Rita Ora, is the host of Non-Stop Pop FM, which has been made official. Again, Non-Stop Pop FM is like a secret thing I was mentally sitting on the back of our GTA Online demo.
Yeah.
But that's like been outed now. There's a picture of Cara Delvine wearing a Los Santos cap in the style of the old San Andreas stuff. And contrary to that picture, she is in fact a hard model. Yes, that'll be, I think, their credible riposte to what they did in GTA 4 with Juliette Lewis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember that, yeah.
And that is all I can add.
All right, sweet. So that's music, that's screenshots, that's Lazlo. Let's go for the biggie then, Dan. IGN have been hands-on with GTA 5. What have they been saying about it?
Lots to talk about. They played 5 missions, one of which we knew about from Game Informer, which is the heist, well, not the heist, but the retrieval of a hostage from the FIB from the IAA building. That's easy for me to say. And there's 4 other missions, one of which sounds a lot like things we've seen in previous screenshots and or trailers. And in fact, it's worth noting that a lot of what Rockstar are detailing is stuff we kind of already knew about. I'm guessing because they just don't want to give any more away this close to the game, particularly on the back of potentially a slightly frustrating leak. So I think they're owning in on a certain number of points. There's some new gameplay things to pull out of the IGN piece, maybe not as many as I would have liked if we'd had the chance to actually play it yet, which we haven't. I'd like to know buttons, I'd like to know more about mechanics. IGN used lots of descriptives about handling, and it is very hard to get across a sense of handling without actually touching the pad. But we'll do our best to pull through what they've been through. But yeah, they definitely had great access. So the guy starts by talking about like the emergent moments that GTA creates, and that the stuff that happens when you go, whoa, complete GTA magic. And he cites a scene with Trevor on a dirt bike when he pulls out off a road directly onto the freeway and before he can react, there's like a truck incoming, and he has to make a split-second decision between, like diving off one way, hitting the truck straight on, or do I gun it and try and head to the other side of the road? And he just said, in a split second, I decided to gun it, veer to the other side of the freeway, and he said he made it by millimeters, and he couldn't believe it, and just sort of flushed with satisfaction that amazing filmic moment that happened.
Yeah.
That was kind of the way they introed the piece. But then they talked about, obviously Rockstar let the guy playing it go wild for a bit and run around like most people do, causing a ruckus in GTA. So the first thing he did was get in a really nice low-slung supercar with kind of the scissor doors, like a really smart car. Talked about how the handling was immediately noticeable as different. And this is where it's a bit imprecise, but he was saying that...
Different to what?
To GTA 4.
Right, I see.
And it's a long time ago, it's 6 years ago, whatever it is. It's almost like a generation ago. And then he's talking about the fact the cars now are much more like sure-footed and grippy and less slippy.
Right.
It's a very imprecise way to describe things, but he was talking about that, saying he basically really liked the handling. He thought it wasn't too slippy or light. It just felt really nice and powerful. Talked about obviously how the game looks. We've seen it, we can describe it. He said it was beautiful. You're struck consistently by the neon, all the ambient stuff happening, the detail. Like as you're riding on the freeway, you can see the night lights reflecting from the cracks in the sort of unkempt freeway. It's even stuff like that. Details like when you turn off the ignition on a really top-end sports car, you can still hear it sort of clicking and purring away.
Right. Nice, yeah.
Yeah, it's nice and evocative, that sort of thing. Also then talked about like just driving through the world, talks about going through Vinewood and the neon. He says he left the car at the Cathay Theatre, which I think we've seen in Vinewood.
I think it's the Chinese theatre, yeah.
Yeah, and then he said he used the weapons wheel. Didn't talk exactly about how he accessed it, he just said he brought it up. But he says the wheel itself functions in a similar way to the weapon wheel in Max Payne 3, which looked sort of visually like it was the case. He says the main wheel is broken down into a series of subcategories. After scrolling with a stick to the weapon type you want, left and right on the D-pad will cycle between individual weapons. So I guess each bit on the wheel represents a sort of like a weapon type, whether it's like SMGs or heavy machine guns. Then you can tap through for the specific gun you want and the modification you've got. So this guy chose a heavy machine gun and clicked on them until he found a minigun. And he said, obviously went out onto the street and let fly with a minigun, which is, again, what a lot of people would probably do, despite the intricacy of the plot and what have you. And just said, the minigun made incredibly short work of vehicles, like chewing them up.
Well, we saw that in that video the other last week, didn't we?
Yeah.
Of him going down the street in his massive sort of reinforced suit shooting a minigun.
Yeah, it's really exciting. And he's saying that basically almost immediately you got the police involved and it escalated really rapidly. And he said that it was worth noting just quite how quickly from their initial response he was out of the game, because he said that they weren't just like coming in mob-handed like before, but they actually picked him off from distance.
Oh, right, okay.
And he said before he knew it, he was waking up in hospital.
Again, something we glimpsed in the gameplay demo we saw, the single-player gameplay demo, when they brought in snipers to try and pick us off from the roofs and that sort of thing. So it sounds like the AI is going to be much more efficient at dealing with you. Yeah, definitely. And he said that when he woke up, what strikes you is, you're outside the hospital, but it's that sense of daylight in Los Santos compared to like Liberty City, which did feel quite gloomy and it had like a smoggy feel to it. It was quite grey. Well, I think this is the riposte to that, and he just said it strikes you that all the time you feel like you're in this beautiful sunny world, hot, warm, everything LA is. He thinks they completely captured that. Now, then he talks about, again, having come out of hospital, the first thing he does is try to hold up another car. So he pulled out a pistol, and he said he pulled out a pistol and trained it on a car, expecting the guy to jump out. But he said this guy, in fact, put his head down behind the wheel and floored it to run him over. Oh, right, that's interesting.
So that was quite a nice AI response, much more aggressive. And he says that it is a case throughout the game, you're almost playing a lottery wheel, that when you open up, and it's always been this way to an extent, you open up a car door and some people will meekly roll out and offer no resistance. Others might try and fist fight you. Maybe some will pull a piece or something. It's
pull a piece.
Yeah,
you're
it
getting
really
proper
is.
gangster.
I know. Well, this is it. This is the authenticity you get.
Yeah.
So, and he talked about he picked up a shiny red El Camino style pickup, threw it around. He was talking about how the handling was so different from the supercar. He said it was like, felt really chunky, but it wasn't quite the same. But yeah, it didn't stick to the road quite as well. And that was largely it for his sort of messing around. And then he went into some missions.
Okay,
so 5 missions he played.
it's a lot of missions.
It's a lot. So they're very short. First was called Repossession, which is an early mission which involves Franklin and Lamar, who were working for the car dealer Simeon Yatarian, who we've talked about many times, the dodgy Armenian car dealer. Now, apparently, Simeon butters up Franklin with an Employee of the Month award that Franklin gets really annoyed about, apparently. And that also annoys Lamar. But the pair of them are tasked with repossessing a motorcycle that was sold to a gangbanger who's never made a payment, which again is in line with what we know about him taking cars back from people who haven't got the means to pay for them. So yeah, they get to choose from a series of nice sports cars already in Simeon's garage to go on their mission. So it says, it says players will be able to save their favourites in a garage or safe house, and if a safe vehicle is abandoned or destroyed, it can be recovered for a fee at the local impound lot. It's largely like we know about the cars themselves. Okay, so he goes to where the motorbike is supposed to be held.
Yeah.
And he says you can hear the tyres like crunching on the road. There's people like will flip you off if you get in a collision. He says it's really exciting. This is where he talks about the freeway. He goes forward and says eventually they find the guy and it all goes wrong almost immediately. And Lamar triggers a firefight whilst looking for the bike. He kicks a pistol towards Franklin and then you get to sample the combat hands-on. Again, IGN talk about how the combat feels really tight and much more punchy, more like Red Dead or Max Payne 3. Lots of use of cover. And he says a car peels into the fracas and it crashes minutes later, leaving a trail of fuel on the ground. Now Lamar shouts to him to shoot the fuel, which I guess is showing off that mechanic we know about igniting fuel. So yeah, he ignites the fuel, flicks across the ground, back onto the wrecked car, and it explodes spectacularly. And it says, then the bike Franklin and Lamar recover, speeds off down an alley. They end up chasing him down, so Lamar gets Lamar's in the passenger seat, Franklin is driving, they chase him down. Now Lamar shouts to you to shoot the guy off the motorbike, which the guy tried while he was playing it but couldn't basically make it work. But they went into the back of the bike, knocked the bike over and spilt the driver onto the ground, and then they were able to recover the bike, and I think that was essentially the end of that mission.
Okay, so it shows a sort of, I guess it gives an indication, presumably this is quite early on in the game, and I guess it gives an indication of how each of the characters probably start out with missions unrelated to one another. Obviously, these sort of small missions at the start of their GTA 5 storylines that eventually they build up to that kind of meshing together and coming together.
Yeah, that's it, and I guess you do get a glimpse of like Franklin's world, whilst the game also sort of drip feeds you gameplay mechanics like the shooting the fuel line, or introducing you to basic pistol combat and cover, but in a more exciting way than perhaps previous GTA games have done. Apparently it's also come out that Chop isn't Franklin's dog, at least not initially, but Lamar's, which we've been tweeted, and apologies, I can't remember.
I think it's a guy called Steve. Thanks, Steve, for your tweet.
And he suggested that it corroborates a theory you put forward just the other week.
Well, I mean, it wasn't the other week, it was a couple of months ago. I think you were on holiday that week, and so James and I were doing it, and I speculated, and it was pure speculation, that Chop might have originally been Lamar's dog, and that Franklin actually just takes ownership of it. And now, why would he take ownership of it? Because maybe Lamar's not around on the scene anymore. My take on it was that maybe Lamar, because he doesn't want to leave the kind of East Los Santos area, he doesn't want to leave his kind of gang fight, so maybe Lamar gets shot as a part of that, and gets shot at a time when Franklin is just starting to make some serious money alongside Michael and Trevor, and because Lamar gets shot, Franklin is sort of drawn back into that world, which is why we glimpse him in some of the trailers, some of the footage, sort of taking down, I think, Ballers, gang members, and maybe he's drawn back into that world, and part of that is that he ends up sort of taking over ownership of Chop. That was my theory months ago, and who knows? Maybe the fact that in this demo Lamar has Chop originally goes some way to back that up. Or maybe it doesn't. Who knows?
Yeah, exactly. Like all theories, you can present some evidence to support them. You could also say that, like, we do know that Lamar dishes out missions and sort of tutorials in GTA Online. So you go, well, how could he do that if he's dead? But GTA Online is set before the events of GTA 5, so you couldn't rule it out on that ground either. So, hey, we'll see. It's a fun thing. It's a nice piece of evidence. Okay, the second mission we saw was called, well, not we saw, IGN saw, was called Three's Company, which was in fact the Rappel IAA hostage rescue mission, that we talked about in Game Informer previously. So we do know a fair bit about this, so we'll gloss over it a little bit. It does talk about what it feels like to fly the chopper, and the shock news is a bit like GTA 4.
Right, okay.
Like a bit like GTA 4, but slightly more sharper and precise. Again, it's a precise, using the word precise is an imprecise term, without relative context. And he says, he talks about getting the chopper into position. You get to swap to Michael, who's set to do the rappel. And you get to see all the mechanics we've seen in trailers we've talked about on the show. Sometimes the game will automatically switch you between characters. Sometimes you'll have the option. Goes through the whole gamut of this. Now, as Michael comes in to get the hostage, the target is being threatened with sodomy by a large flashlight, which I think we've talked about previously on the show.
Yeah, we have talked about that,
Yeah, and it says, and he bursts through the window and he grabs him, but he's immediately surrounded by several armed men. It says it triggers another automatic swap, this time to Franklin. There's a coloured flash on screen signals the switch, and as it confirms sort of what we talked about previously, it says, well, the switch, Michael is blue, Franklin is green, Trevor is orange. That's the switch.
Yeah.
Maybe not their specials, maybe the specials is also colour.
But this is what we saw in the 4-minute trailer. This section exactly was when it switched to Franklin on a rooftop with a sniper rifle.
Okay, so we sort of know what happens. There's a bit of a pistol shootout. They clear the room. Michael and the target escape back to the chopper. Switches back to Franklin to address the hostile helicopters that are appearing. And I think you pick one of them off, possibly with a rocket, is it? Yeah, that's it. So, I mean, essentially we know about that mission. It's one that's out there. There isn't much other new info, as I can tell, from that particular section.
Okay, mission 3 then, Dan.
This is called Derailed. And this mission sees Michael and Trevor hijacking a train to nab some loot within it. And this ties in again with screenshots we've seen, of the train.
Yeah. The
one where we see Trevor leaping, and footage where we see Trevor leaping away from two colliding trains. Again, this is Rockstar treading over old ground, inverted commas. This is what we know. So, they need to hijack this train. Trevor doesn't actually know what he's getting. He just knows he needs to get it. So it's like a weapon you put into purpose, really. So Michael heads off to find a boat for his part of the plan. Now, Trevor hops on a bike and sets off to catch the train. So, he says he tucks in behind the last carriage and follows the moving train till he spots a raised area to the right of the track. And in fact, we've commented on previous screenshots where there was a train track and like a raised platform above it, so it could well likely be in this area. And I think it's kind of like out towards the Route 68 area, I think. I mean, again, I haven't seen it, but that seems to be my speculation based on the screenshots. And he talks about weaving the bike up a small hill and over a slight outcrop. You actually aim for the train below. So you're going alongside by the train as it's going below. You hit an outcrop. You aim to land on the train.
Right.
Now,
Okay.
the dude says he basically messed it up and landed on the train and fell off and died. And he said the good news was it showed off the game's new checkpoint system.
Phew.
So he said that instead of spilling you back to the start of the mission, you have to do all the old awful things of going back to ammunition, buying a vest, recruiting the team, sitting through the cutscene, chatting in the car. He says, none of that happens.
There's no you only had to follow the train, CJ.
Oh, God. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I'm still shuddering now.
Yeah, I know, that's what I mean. So it says here, shows the checkpoint system. So the minute you make the jump, you start again from the point where you made the jump.
Okay, great.
So it's a really nice, tight checkpointing system. Again, in line with modern sort of game systems, really. You're on the train. You make your way forward. He also talks about the fact that, like we've talked about previously, like the Ballad of Gay Tony, every mission is replayable. So you can try new tactics, better scores. It sounds like you can get medals for doing various different things. Just after you reach the front of the train, Trevor jumps in and knocks out the driver. You briefly drive the train. I don't think there's much steering involved. It's a train.
It's a train. It just goes forward.
Forward or not forward. Now, at the same time, Michael is skipping across the water in what's called a Zodiac-style rigid inflatable boat.
That's what we saw in our demo.
Yeah, and he says the physics looks great, as we've also talked about. Water looks fantastic. He says there are waves foaming beneath the boat. It feels really light and skiddy. He says he skims across the ocean up the Zancudo River to a rail bridge where Trevor is about to cause a major train crash.
Right, okay.
This again probably ties in with the footage we've seen of Trevor
Yeah.
jumping away from the train. So it says, 2 fully laden freight trains collide as Trevor leaps from the cabin and into the river below. It says, containers tumble into the water. It says, as Michael, he tosses a satchel charge onto our target container and he blows open the doors. It says, Michael heads in and he switches back to Trevor, covering him from behind a log outside. It says, a team of private security is already en route to retrieve the item in question. And he has to keep them away from Michael's back. So 3 enemy boats turn up. He says, like, he sprays off some bullets, and it's enough to see them off. He says some choppers come in, and he says, like, you can see a line of lead coming out of the cockpit of the things, and they peel off into the rocky cliffs. But he says, yeah, he actually picks them off with some machine gun fire, and one explodes, and the other drops like a leaf into the river. He says what really helps is that there's a thermal scope on his sniper rifle, and it's really handy for picking off goons hiding on a bridge above.
Right.
Then he says the soft lock targeting and the range of his light machine gun means it isn't essential to use the sniper, it's just another nice tactic. He says finally a pair of security personnel arrives on a hill above via parachute, but also he's pretty easily to cut them down. He says escaping from the scene, he chooses to fire on his pursuers while Michael helms the boat. Now they're pursued by air, by land and by water. It says a 4x4 bouncing alongside the river, scattering hikers. And it's like people jumping out of the way of this thing chasing them. He says that was really hard to shake off, but eventually they do. Eventually they escape, they reach open water. He switches to Michael. They beach their boat and they enter their escape vehicles.
Cool, that sounds great.
So it sounds like a really exciting mission.
Yeah.
And again, tying in with imagery you've probably just seen on screen that we've seen previously.
Yep.
But it does outline a few of the mysteries of those screens. Right now, 4th mission. This mission's called Nervous Ron.
I wonder who that's about.
Yeah, exactly. We know Nervous Ron.
Yeah.
He's the dude the nervous-looking dude wearing the sort of pork pie hat, the conspiracy theorist. This is a Trevor mission, essentially. It's an awful lot of fun, he says. It says, Trevor is furious after some members of the Lost MC have broken into Trevor's trailer and broken one of his collectible statues. So for all his mania, Trevor has got an OCD-style statue collection.
Brilliant.
Thing. So he says, to get a 2-in-1, because he wants to get hold of their arms dealing business, he sets about, killing them and getting revenge for his broken statuettes.
Yeah.
So, you get to see Trevor's neck of the woods. He's saying it's a big change from Los Santos. It's far quieter. There's less street lights. He says the main source of light is the headlamp from Trevor's ATV.
Oh, that's
so there's a
quite
real
cool.
countryside feel to it. I can imagine it now, with the ambient sort of cricket noise and more mellow soundtrack. Sounds really, really good. He says, as Trevor he heads to the nearby ammunition. He says, at this time of night the store's really quiet. He says, the only real sound is the buzz from the neon at the front of the store. So again, even details like that, you can put yourself in that nighttime scene, can't you?
It's really backs up what we saw in that game. Remember when we dropped Lacey Jonas off and we just sort of stood outside her house and you could see like little insects buzzing away.
Like little fireflies was at night. It was fun. That was weirdly the bit that stuck with me more almost than anything. To see Michael Slither looking cool at night time. He says, inside, Trevor threatens the clerk into lending him a rifle, a scope, and a suppressor. He says he talks again briefly about customization. He says, different plugins can be bought and applied in any of the game's ammunition stores. And as mentioned, players will never lose these, even if they get busted. So that's again in line with what we talked about. He says he makes his way back to the outskirts of a Lost MC-controlled airstrip. Now, this is interesting because I don't know if we can talk back about it because this might link to the leaked achievements, which could be potential spoilers. So I won't. But the fact that there's a lost controlled airstrip could be significant.
Yeah.
It says as he's doing so, a coyote unexpectedly bolts in front of his ATV.
Amazing.
He says he accidentally hits it and there's a big thud and a yelp before he's
Ambient
even seen it.
wildlife.
So it's nice, yeah. He says he rendezvous with Ron. Trevor sends him into an area to set some explosives, and you have to cover Ron from a bunch of bikers as he creeps down the rundown airstrip.
Right.
Now, this could be, as we know, given where we know the Lost MC are positioned, and that's kind of like midway along the south part of the Alamo Sea, not far from Sandy Shores itself, which is where we also know is the Sandy Shores airstrip. So could it be it's initially owned by the Lost MC? I don't know. I doubt there's 2 airstrips in the same proximity anyway, so it could be that. He says eventually the Lost get wise to Trevor's hostile takeover and begin to fight back. And he says rising to the scene and wades into the skirmish, he makes his way into a hangar where Ron is preparing to taxi out on the runway in a twin-engine plane. Now Trevor leaps onto the wing, which is I think what we've seen in the previous trailer. Ron moves the plane out of the hangar. He says, he's able to fire at the bikers ahead and rolls onto his side and back. So you can imagine sitting on the back of the plane, shooting with bikers behind you.
Again, something we've seen in the trailers.
Yeah, and really filmic and really exciting. And he says it's just like Max Payne's ability to fire in any direction when prone in Max Payne 3. Rockstar learning from themselves. It makes perfect sense. Now, further down the runway, Trevor leaps off and grabs a plane of his own. So he hurtles down the tarmac, skittles one biker over, and his body goes flailing underneath the plane. Sounds really exciting. Another leaps onto the wing and clutches it as he takes off. And he falls away screaming as he jerks with the controls.
Right.
So he literally shake him off. It says, follows Ron over the ocean, where he encourages us to get down low to avoid being detected by the nearby military base.
Interesting.
So that, again, that makes me think, depending which way they go out of the Alamo Sea, if they're going westwards out of the Alamo Sea, is the military base sort of down south of the Zancudo River? Is it in fact that hidden town-stroke installation Tim and I talked about?
Yeah, maybe.
Having seen GTA Online that's far out on the west coast.
Yeah.
Could it be? I don't know, but could it be? Because presuming that's the way you've gone out to the ocean and you're flying low, it could be that.
Yeah.
We don't know, but that's speculation. He says, the higher you get in your plane, just says the game looks so much like a postcard. He says, it's not falling apart. It just looks beautiful, and that is exactly in line with what we've seen. He says he drops the merchandise from the planes to some awaiting boats. They race back to a different airfield. Which one's this? Mountains rise to the left. There are wetlands below. Blaine County and the sea make up everything you can see. It says it looks absolutely beautiful. He says the airfield comes into view, cuts the throttle to land. He says he throttles too much and Trevor cuts the engines entirely. So that sounds like a massive guff up. And he says they splutter back to life, spluttering out big black smoke just in time to get the distance to actually make the runway. And he lands to a sort of big skiddy, dramatic conclusion.
Again, sounds very exciting.
Very good. Now, apparently, the last mission was his favourite.
Right.
So, mission 5, the final mission, is called Vinewood Babylon. He describes this as the most exciting of what he played. This involves, and again, ties in with screenshots and footage we've seen. He says, a contact of Michael's needs a package retrieved from a private jet. He says, the jet, however, is airborne, so Michael and Trevor need to force it down. So Trevor heads off to find an off-road vehicle to chase the jet, which is what we've seen. We've seen Trevor chasing a burning private jet in a previous screenshot. It says now he goes up to a quiet spot overlooking the city, playing as Michael. He says waiting in a van is a very special gun. He says think of the gun Bruce Willis shot Jack Black's arm off with in 1997's The Jackal, a huge mounted rifle controlled via a computer screen. He says there's a small red reticule leading the plane tracks where you need to shoot to damage one of the plane's engines. He says after 3 hits, the plane begins to lose height and it leaves a big billowing trail of smoke so you can track it.
Okay.
Now this is where you take control of Trevor, who's sort of gunning his way across Blaine County, leaping over hills in a mad panic to chase the train, trying to follow the crippled aircraft. He says the plane eventually crashes and Trevor's able to recover the package from Michael's contact. He says now that you switch back to Michael and you're told to destroy the van you got the amazing sniper rifle from. So to do that, you slosh all your fuel in a big circle around the car. You slowly back away and leave a trail of gasoline just to get a nice clear run in. It says the van burns slowly, the tyres burst, and it finally explodes in like a massive shower. And he says that, that was like the end of, essentially, of the demo. Absolutely incredible. And he just talks about wrapping it up. And he just summarises that what you forget is the sheer size of the world, the tightness of the mechanics. I think as he's writing it, and I've done this sort of thing before, you work yourself up into an absolute frenzy of excitement because you do think, GTA, it's going to give me all these things. And he just, at the end, he says essentially, forget talking about PS4 or Xbox One. The biggest event of the year is GTA 5. And he says, never mind November. I suspect the next generation will start when GTA 5 says it does.
Yeah, I mean, that echoes a lot, I think, what people have been saying in the comments and online. People are so excited about this game. Do you think, just one quick question, Dan, do you think any of those missions, and obviously this is, again, probably speculation on our part, do you think any of those missions require that kind of prep work that Rockstar have been talking about? Because not all of them are heists in the sort of traditional sense, So do you think these will just be kind of missions that you do as a sort of... Because that last one, for example, getting hold of a laser-powered sniper rifle sounds like that's not going to be the sort of stuff that's kicking around on the streets. Yeah.
Whether that ties to, speculation purely, things like what sounds like the mission to Polito or the Polito heist where you need to retrieve military equipment. I guess you stack up this really high-grade hardware, and as the stakes rise, you take on increasingly ludicrous missions and/or heists. Like we say, we've seen the official trailer where he's wearing a full-blown padded, military suit like the Oscar-winning Catherine Bigelow film. I've forgotten the Hurt Locker.
Yeah.
And that would evoke actually a scene from one of the Call of Duty games right at the end where you get to pad up and carry a minigun and live out those incredible fantasies. So I think there'll be a big element of that. These missions sound a little bit more capsule, but that equipment particularly sounds like something you'd probably need to retrieve.
Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed the show this week. Lots of bits and bobs, but all really super interesting. We're so close to release now. We're getting so excited about it in the office. I'm sure you're getting excited about it out there. Please do subscribe to keep up to date with the show. We'll be carrying on way past release with all sorts of stuff, talking about online and our impressions of the single player and all sorts of other stuff. Dan, did you want anything to
a couple of things to add. One is that obviously there's been this spoiler leak within the world that kind of Rockstar Piper Alpha style have been mopping up to get rid of all signs of that leak and taking down various outlets that have hosted that stuff. We, apart from one show that we clearly flagged as spoilerish, which was based on the achievements, we have done nothing on any of those spoilers, and it is not our intention to feature any of those spoilers. You can watch any of our shows upcoming and not be spoilt, unless we've got something right prediction wise, but that's only by using our own sort of evidence and smarts. We're not going to go into the world of spoilers. Please do not worry when you're watching the show. Also to say, to make it clear, we've launched a new GTA 5 o'clock spin-off, which is definitely going to run at least until the game comes out, called GTA 5-Minute Facts. Now, as you know, if you're a regular watcher of GTA 5 o'clock, it may not be packed full of new info for yourself, but if you've missed a few shows, or you're just looking for a recap on all the key areas of the game, it could be missions, characters, plot, the map, all those different things. We're going to go through day by day in 5 super tight minutes, describing each of those things with nice grabs. And it's almost like a nice revision recap of everything that's there. But if you feel like you followed the show all the way, don't worry, it's not necessarily for you. It's just a nice recap. It's for people who maybe don't want to take in a big 60-minute video of Tim and I being informed and no doubt hilarious.
Well, not sure about that second bit, but but thanks for listening. We hope you've enjoyed it. Please do whack your comments down below or get in touch via Twitter on GTA VO Clock. Otherwise, we'll see you again soon. Goodbye.